series called Close Encounters. And it's kind of basically what I've been talking about, even this morning, is that, God is the same yesterday as He is today. And I think we just set our limits so low that we don't realize how much amazing power that He has in everyday life to transform everything that we do. And so I think that we kind of shortchange ourselves because we just go with the status quo. We just kind of do whatever it is that we do. We get caught up in our routines of life, and I'm going to just call it a rut sometimes because it is true. We get in this routine and it becomes so much of a routine that it becomes a rut, and it's been dug really deep, and it's just something that you do, and it's just how you are. But the reality is that every day we have the opportunity to meet God. And I think that we just don't tap into that. That's not something, we're just taught that you go to church and then you come home and then you're supposed to read your Bible and, it's all these rules. It's supposed to, you should, we always hear that word, you really should. I'm guilty of saying that. You really should read your Bible. You know what? The reality is that you should, there's something inside of you that passion should well up, and it's not about a should, it's about a desire. Lord, I really need to hear you today. Because let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. All you have to do is turn on the news, and I'm not even kidding. 2 minutes in, murder, violence, and just disintegration in the families and society and the schools. It's just all this stuff that happens, and it's like, if you don't think you need a Savior, something's wrong. And so, because we do know who He is, that should be something when we get up in the morning, that desire to say, Lord, I need you to guide my day today. I need you to guide my steps. I need you to speak into me. I need you to help me through this. I need you to help me see people through your eyes and not my own. Because so often we just get up and it's a routine, it's life, it's just what we do. But I'm here to tell you that God has something bigger for you. He has something greater for you because He is the God of yesterday. And let me tell you, He was all over the people of yesterday. He spoke to them, He walked with them, He conversed with them, He promised things over them, He touched their lives, He transformed them. He did all these things all the time. They were touched by God. It wasn't just about, well, I follow this God. He was a part of their everyday life. And He's the same today. And He can be a part of your everyday life. He can guide your steps. He can speak to you in times that you need a word. He can be there to comfort you, to give you peace, to settle your spirit, to give you the wisdom and the words to know what to say, and the wisdom and the words to know what not to say. He can keep our mouth closed when we really need to not say anything. It's in and through Him that we have all of that access. And I think that, we just get so settled in our ways that we just don't think about experiencing something bigger and greater than ourselves. And I know for me, I am one of those people that I like to experience and have an encounter. When I go to the zoo, which I go quite often because I love to go to the zoo, I read all the things, even though I already know what the animals are. Right? I read all the things again. It becomes an experience for me. I sit and I gaze at the animals. I think about, just how God created everything so different. It becomes an experience for me, not a drive-by. Okay? Or a walk by where you're like, oh, there's some more giraffes. Oh, look at the rhinos. That's really cool. When you're done with the zoo in 30 minutes, it becomes an experience, and that's how I want to live my life with God. I want to get up every day, and I want to experience Him, and I want Him to speak to me. I want Him to tell me things. I want Him to move me. I want Him to get me out of my seat and show me the way. Because I mess up all the time. I make wrong decisions, and I do things, and it's in and through Him that I see that, is he's able to say, yeah, that probably wasn't a good thing to do. But I'm going to show you a better way. And I listen. And then I do the better thing. And then I continue to do the better thing. And then I'm not that person anymore. I become a new creature every day. And that experience can be for every one of us. And so today we're going to talk about Jacob. Last week we talked about Abraham. And Jacob had several experiences with God. Several. And the two that we're going to talk about is the dream that he had. Okay? Jacob's ladder. We all know that, right? And then we're also going to look at the wrestling. We know about that too. How we wrestle with God. So next week will be the wrestling, and today we're going to talk about the dream. But before I even get to that, I've got to set the stage for you. I've got to tell you a little bit about Jacob so you can understand. There was a little girl in a Sunday school class, and she was really upset. And she asked the teacher, she goes, why is everybody so hard on Jacob? He's a nice guy. And all he wanted to do was, to do the right thing. And so she asked the question to the teacher, was God trying to kill him when he wrestled with him? And the funny thing is, the Sunday school teacher didn't have an answer. She was like, I don't know. So she went, she kind of researched, and she asked a bunch of different people, and then took her answer back to the young girl. And a lot of times we'll be challenged by the little ones, right? We don't have the answers, and it causes us to kind of delve a little bit deeper into the Word. But the reality is that the girl kind of had her information a little bit wrong, because Jacob wasn't a nice guy. He didn't start out to be a very nice guy. At the very beginning of time, when he was first born, he held on to the heel of his brother Esau. Now, Jacob and Esau are the two sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Okay? And he's in the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, so that many nations will come from him. And so, at the very beginning, he's deceitful and deceives by holding on to his brother's ankle when he comes out of the womb. Well, way before, okay, when Rebekah she couldn't have a child, she went to the Lord and she inquired of him, why can't I have a child? And he says, oh yeah, you will. You won't have just one. You'll have two. You're going to have twins. And the younger will rule, and the older will serve the younger. So she already knew in her mind, she already had that promise from the Lord. Okay? So she knew that Jacob was going to be the seed that the nations would come from. And so she loved Jacob. And she took every initiative that she could to ensure that Jacob was going to fulfill that. Okay? Well, Isaac, he was a hunting kind of guy. And he loved Esau because Esau was a huntsman. And he was a big, burly, hairy guy. Kind of red. That's where he gets his name from. And so Isaac loved Esau. That kind of caused a little bit of conflict between the two. Okay? Isaac and Rebekah. Not that it necessarily says that, but it does kind of have an issue. And so what happens is that Jacob kind of stays around the house a lot. So he's probably, hanging out with his mom, Rebekah, cooking, doing the things in the house. Esau was a huntsman, so he was always away. He was always out hunting and doing those manly things, hugging on trees and doing all that kind of stuff. Well, one day, Esau came back from going on a hunt, and he was extremely hungry. I mean, he was so hungry, and he sits down at the table, and Jacob's in the kitchen, and he's making stew, actually some lentil soup, some stew. And Esau's like, oh, man, I'm famished. Give me some of that stew. And Jacob goes, what does it mean to you for me to give you this stew? What is it for me to give you this stew? And so Esau's like, just give it to me. I'm really hungry. Well, see, Jacob had a plan. And so what he says to him, he says, why don't you sell me your birthright? I'll exchange that for a bowl of stew since you're so hungry. And he says, well, because I am so hungry, what would a birthright matter anyway? Because I'm going to die of starvation. And so obviously, with those very words, he showed his disrespect and disregard for his birthright, which is a double portion. Okay, not just one, but a double portion of the inheritance. Okay? And being the firstborn, then that would mean that he would be next in line to lead in the family. Well, Jacob deceives him and he sells him his birthright. And he says, first, let's put this in an oath, okay? He was smart. And so he did. And so Jacob received the birthright from his family because Esau sold it to him for a bowl of stew. And you think to yourself, well, smart man. It's very deceptive. Okay? And so what happens after that is that Rebekah is, Isaac gets older and he's about to delve out some blessings. Okay? Because he gives the firstborn the blessing from God, whatever it is that God has put on his heart to bless him with. And so he tells Rebekah, actually Rebekah overhears him talking to Esau, and he says, why don't you go out and do some hunting and bring me back my favorite meat that you know that I like, and why don't you cook it up and bring it in, and then I'm going to bless you. And so Esau's like, this is awesome, okay? I'm going to do that, Dad. And so he goes out, and he goes and he starts hunting. Well, what happens is Rebekah hears him. And she's like, I'm gonna take an initiative here. Because that's not going to happen. Because she already knew that God's blessing was going to come through Jacob. Okay? So I want you to see what's going on here. And so what she does is she goes to Jacob and she says, look, your dad's about to delve out some blessings. And he has already sent Esau out, and he's going to come back. So what I want you to do, and I want you to usurp that, I want you to go in, and I want you to receive that blessing from Isaac for yourself. And Jacob's like, do you see the difference between us? Because Jacob is not a very big man like Esau. Okay? Very fair-skinned. Esau was very hairy. And so he's like, how am I going to pull this off? And so what she does is she gets him to kill a goat. He comes back. He puts the fur on him. He cooks up this meal for him. He goes in. And he deceives his dad. And Isaac even says to him, you have the voice of Jacob, but you have the body, because he feels his hands, he touches him, but you have the body of Esau. Are you truly who you say you are? And Jacob lies and deceives his father into believing that he is Esau because he wants the blessing. So I don't know about you, but I look at that and I'm thinking, that's not a very nice guy. But we look at that and we see, and this is something we can glean, is that God, in his amazing ways, predestined Jacob to have a blessing. And whatever it took, it was going to happen. Even in Jacob's deception. Because God could have made it happen different ways. Something could have happened to Esau. He could have gotten killed. He could have gotten eaten by an animal. Something else could have happened that God could have taken care of. But Jacob and Rebekah took it upon themselves to make those things happen. And so he was deceitful, and that's where he gets his name. Deceives. That's what Jacob means. Deceives. And so we look at that, and as we know the end of the story, and as we'll see as we talk about today and next week, is that God always has a plan. And you can't mess it up. You can try. And you can do things on your own, but if God makes a plan, it's going to come to fruition. It's going to be exactly what he wants. And if you try to go about it your own way, it's still going to be whatever it is that God wants. And here's the thing for us today. Have you ever just looked back at your life and thought, how could God possibly use me? How could God possibly take this and do something great with it? I know he knows what I've done, but I don't know. How difficult it is to be able to see yourself differently than what you are. But see, God's about transformation. And although Jacob deceived, and he did what was wrong, although it turned out to be good, he still had that heart. He still had that heart of deception. He listened to his mother and not his father. He went against his father. But in the end, it all turned out okay. So no matter what God is doing, we can't thwart that. We can't go and say, well, it's not going to happen. No, it is going to happen. And so if there's anything that's ever happened in your life, a promise, or you just really feel like God has spoken into you and said, this is going to happen. These things are going to come to fruition in your lifetime. No matter what road you took to deviate from that, no matter where you went, way far away from the Lord, He'll bring you back. And that's what He does with Jacob. Well, what happens is that Jacob, as you can rightly understand, he goes in, he deceives his dad, and Isaac is confused, but he blesses Jacob anyway. And once a blessing has been spoken, that's it. It's a covenant. And so he can't revoke that. He can't pull that back. He can't take that back from Jacob and then place it on Esau. Well, what happens is Esau comes back from hunting. He fixes up that food, and it's all nice, just the way Isaac likes it. And he takes it in, and then Isaac's like, who is this? It's I. Oh, Dad, it's me, Esau. You told me to go out and get some food, and I brought it back, and now I'm going to receive my blessing. And he says, I've already placed my blessing on Jacob. And you can imagine how Esau felt. Completely distraught. Not only did he take his birthright, which takes away his inheritance, now he's taken the blessing from God. He was not happy. He was not happy at all. He was so angry that he said, I am going to kill him. And guess who hears? Little Rebecca hanging out at the door, which is exactly what she was doing. And she overheard Esau say that to Isaac. And so she goes into Isaac and she says, look, with all these Canaanite women and stuff, I just don't want Jacob to have, I don't want him to be exposed to that and end up marrying one of these. We need him to marry one of our kind. And so let's send him off to Laban, which is her brother. And he goes, okay. And so she's afraid that Jacob's going to get killed by Esau. So she's conniving, right? Trying to get everything in order for her little precious baby Jacob. And so Jacob comes to Isaac, and he ends up blessing Esau. But it wasn't a very good blessing. But Jacob comes in, and so Isaac tells him, hey, I need you to go away, and you need to go ahead and go to Laban's, and you need to spend some time there and find a wife for yourself. And so he does. He gets up to leave. Well, Esau is so mad, he is livid. And we're not sure if he's kind of going after him then, but he was looking for him. But Jacob is real quick to just get out of there. And so that's what brings us to our text today in Genesis 28. So we're going to read 10 through 22. Except I don't have my glasses. I apologize. So what happens is Jacob leaves and he goes off and he's scared. He's trying to figure out what to do. You can see me up there? No, I had them. I can probably get through. So he goes off and he's underneath the stars, and you can just imagine how he feels because he knows that he's deceived his dad. I mean, I don't know about you. I would be beside myself. I mean, that's a huge thing. And then your brother's so mad at you that he wants to kill you. And so he flees, and he's really scared, and he's going to Laban's house. And what happens is that he is underneath the stars. And, I know they're right here because I've had them. Oh, these are solid, too.
I know how it is.
Make sure I give her back to you because I might deceive you. Okay, so anyway, so he's laying underneath the stars and he has this dream, okay? And so it says, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely, the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone that he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil over the top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. And of course, Bethel means the house of God. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. I don't know about you, but I think that if we look really closely at the scripture, we see some transformation here. Okay? We see Jacob who's scared, he's leaving his household, and he goes out, and he's underneath the stars, he's sleeping, but I just want you to see there's enough safety. He feels enough security to sleep in the open sky, out in the open. Okay? There's no fear of Esau coming. He has totally put his trust in the Lord. He's basically, when you look at this, he's saying, okay, I feel security in you. I'm okay to sleep out. I'm not afraid of Esau coming with me. He's afraid, but he also is very secure in his trust of the Lord. And so he sleeps out in the open. And then God speaks to him. And he speaks to him in a dream. Who here has dreams that you feel like God speaks to you? I know she does. Okay. Write those down. I just want to encourage you. Write those dreams down when you have them. And talk to somebody about them. Because I believe that God does speak through certain people through their dreams. And you need somebody to bounce things back and forth with so that you can kind of get an understanding or an idea of what it is that God's trying to show you. Okay? So what happens is that he has a dream. And number one, in this dream, he saw the correspondence between heaven and earth. How awesome is that? He sees this intercourse of heaven and earth, and it's got this ladder that's touching from the heavens to the earth. And it shows us two things. It shows us in that dream that there's a correspondence going on. He has this dream that angels are going up the ladder and down the ladder, up the ladder and down the ladder. Not people. Angels. They go up. They get what? Responsibilities. They get their duties. They come down. They go on their way. They do their thing. They go up. They come down. They go up. They come down. What does that tell us today? That the heavenlies are open to us. What do you think the ladder represents? That bridge between earth and heaven. See, we need to remember that God was and is and always will be. So if God is that way, and we believe in the Trinity, then Jesus was, Jesus is, and Jesus will be. So Jesus represents that ladder. that bridges the heavens and the earth. And it is through him that the angels go up and down, doing God's bidding. Continuing to just, whatever God tells them to do, come down, make it happen, go back up. And to me, that just is so awesome. And that God revealed that to Jacob. And he showed them that there's more going on than you can see. And so after he sees that, and he realizes that there's this correspondence between earth and heaven, what happens is God comes down, and he looks over, and he is standing next to him. And it says that it makes it sound like that God is actually at the top of the ladder, and the word is not actually that. It means that he's standing beside him. And so together they're watching this happen, and then what happens is that in this dream, God speaks a promise. He doesn't just speak to Jacob. He speaks a promise to Jacob, reaffirming what he has already told Rebekah, right? And what he's already told Isaac, and what he's already told Abraham. And so here's Jacob in his thinking that, I know something great's going to happen, but I don't know how it's going to happen because I am so deceitful. I cannot believe that I even did that to my dad. I mean, he just deceived his own father. And then he's out there, and then God comes and he lays this promise on him. And I love it because it says, there above it stood the Lord, and he says, I am the Lord, the God of your father. And this is what I'm going to give you and your descendants. I'm going to give you all this land that you're lying on. Okay? Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, the very dust. You know how many little grains are in the dust? And they're going to be from the east and the west and the north and the south. They're just going to be all over. And so he just fills Jacob with this promise. And that's number 2, that God gives Jacob a promise. He doesn't just speak to him, but he gives him a promise. And then he says, and not only that, but I'm going to be with you. Okay? This whole time, I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to keep you. I'm going to hem you in from the back and the front. I'm going to lay my hand upon your head, and whatever you do, wherever you go, you're going to be blessed. Don't you want that? I pray those blessings over myself all the time. Lord, I know that you've hemmed me in from the front and the back, and you've laid your hand upon me, and I thank you for the blessings that you have for me as you move me from jungle to jungle. Right? As you take me and you move me where you want me to go. And even the places that you don't want me to go, and maybe I've pulled myself to, I know that you still have your hand on me. And that's what he's telling Jacob. He's promising him these things. And so number 3 is that God makes this amazing impression on Jacob. And see, he's just going through so much emotional stuff at this time, and it's like, it's not just a promise, but it's like it makes this huge impression on Jacob. And so what it does is it causes him to change and to be different from when he first left his home and came out into the open. There's a transformation that happens when God opens the heavens, gives him the strength, and then speaks a promise over him. It's not just words. It's just an impression. He's like, whoa. Have you ever been impressed by God? Where God just opens up something for you or reveals something to you, and you're just like, wow, that is so amazing. And you picked me. You picked me to hear that. You picked me to fulfill that. You picked me to do your bidding. How awesome is that? And that's exactly what he did with Jacob. But he's still doing those things today. He still wants to do those things today. And see, Jacob could have taken that promise and he could have said, yeah, I appreciate that. But it made an impression on him. And so he in turn says something back to God. And so he says, surely the Lord is in this place. And I was just not aware of it. And then he was afraid. And then he says, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the actual house of God. This is the gate of heaven. And so what he does is he takes the stone that he had laid his head on that night. And that's what they did in honor of God. And they made altars And so he puts the stone down and he makes a pillar of other stones on top of it. And then he doesn't just do that, he anoints it with oil. And he says, this place is the house of God. And to this day, that's what it's called, Bethel, the house of God. And so that's a huge thing. It makes this just amazing impression on Jacob. It's not just that God came to him, it's that he had an encounter with God. He was transformed by God. He was moved by God. And God had a purpose and a plan. And then the very last one, number 4, is that what happens is that Jacob then vows a vow. He reciprocates. He says to God, he says, if God will be with me, if you really are who you say you are, and you really do, you blessed me, and you said that you're going to be with me, well, if you're going to be with me, and you're going to watch over me during this journey that I'm taking, and you're going to give me food to eat, and clothes to wear, because you don't understand, he just left with nothing. Now, Laban is a very rich man, too. But he also, he's part of that family, but he still has to go in and make his way. And so he's telling God, he says, if you're going to do all these things, and you're going to keep me safe, and then you're going to safely return me to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I set up as a pillar will be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. And so that just shows how much of an impression that God had on him. He's just amazed. He knew from the very beginning that he was going to be the seed. Scriptures foretold that. He was fully aware of that. But the thing is that this encounter with God was so special to him. And then he says, you know what? Whatever you do, you're going to feed me, you're going to keep me safe, you're going to watch over me. The least I can do for you to do all of that for me is to give you a tenth of whatever it is that you give me. You notice his words. Whatever you bless me with, Lord, I will give you a tenth of that. He didn't say whatever I acquire, whatever I gain, whatever I work for. He said whatever you bless me with, I will give you a tenth. And so that's his return back to God. He's just saying, look, you deserve way more than that because of all these blessings that you're giving me. And I want you to know that. That's a vow that he made with Jehovah God. And so that day, that dream, that experience, that encounter that he had, we can have today. And as we saw even with Abraham, you don't even have to be doing anything that great. Abraham was sitting outside the opening of his tent on a hot day and had an encounter with God. Here's Jacob just deceived his father Isaac, and he's running away from Esau who wants to kill him, and he's sleeping under the stars, and then all of a sudden, he has an encounter with God. But see, I think the thing is that it's that constant being reminded, that constant you having inside of you just a constant worship and praise for God. Because he looks at your heart. It's not necessarily what's going on in your life, but just that constant, like, God, if it weren't for him, I don't know where I'd be. God, thank you for watching over me today. Thank you for working out that traffic issue. Thank you for this. Thank you for acknowledging him in everything that you do. So that says to him that you're surrendered to him. You're open to those things and that you want to have encounters with him. If you shut him out, if you shut the doors and all the windows and you just hang out in your own little world and you never acknowledge the blessings that he has given to you, the blessings to keep you safe, to feed you, to give you food, which means that he's going to give you the skills that you need to go out and to get a job and to do the things that you need to do. If you trust in him, that's showing him how much you love him. And that keeps the correspondence open from the heavens to the earth. And it's in and through Jesus Christ that we make that happen. It's through your daily prayer. Father, I thank you for those blessings. I thank you for watching over me and keeping me safe, for hemming me in from the front and the back, and placing your hand upon me, and moving me to those places that you want me to go. I thank you for that today you're going to continue to do that in my life. I acknowledge you. I acknowledge your power. I acknowledge your strength. I acknowledge your faithfulness and your consistency. I acknowledge that you love me even though I'm not lovable. I mean, it's just those things. And you know, God just wants to hear that. And when you do that, it just opens the floodgates of heaven. And that's what that is. It's just that flow between heaven and earth. And that's what he wants. He just wants to have an encounter with us. And we're just so busy. Busy, busy, busy. Just living life and doing that we just don't even have time to acknowledge him. But I pray that this week that you would. That you would just spend time just